All right, let's get started then. Welcome to today's webinar. Um, the webinar today addresses mostly those of you who is new to invoices, but also you who have some knowledge will gain benefit of listening to this one. I will go through all the basic functionalities in Readsoft, and also let me just put up the agenda. Yeah, I'll start by introducing some of the different modules. Then I will go through the manager, show some user features that are in there, and also walk you through the verify module and optimize as well. And then I will present some of the key concepts of an invoice profile and some invoice definitions. And finally, show you how to optimize invoice definitions for better and faster recognition. If you have any questions during this webinar, feel free to speak up. We are not that many, so that should be all right. So the first thing you've probably seen when you start or searching for the Readsoft module that there's a lot of different colorful icons. And these are all modules related to Readsoft Invoices. You probably know the Verify module, but we also have a lot of other modules as well. And if we try and put them into what we call routines, then we have on the administrative tasks, the manager module and the optimization module. It's rare that you use the manager module, but we do use it a lot, basically for setting up your Readsoft environment, but also running some maintenance jobs. And if you have some issues or you want to add some new legal entities or stuff like that to your environment, then we use the manager to do that. It's a question if optimize should be the administrative tool, but I would more say it's a daily routine. But besides the scan module, then we also have the verify module as a task that you run on a daily basis. And finally, we have two modules that none of you are using. We call them interpret and transfer. These two modules, the interpret module is the engine behind Readsoft. It captures all the information on your invoices, where transfer sends information to your ERP system. If we look on the document flow, the image or the invoice is either getting scanned or comes via an email, and then it goes into the interpret module. That is a service running in a big server somewhere in your organization. What happens there is we try to identify the sender of the document based on some information on your invoice. Once we identify the supplier, we extract all the information necessary and validate it. And overall, we have two different statuses. It's either containing some errors, or we can approve it based on some validations. If there are errors on the invoice, it will be redirected to the verify module, and that is where you come in and correct all the information and finally approve the invoice. And once you approve it, it's being moved to the transfer module, where we separate the image and the data that we have captured and send it into your ERP system. And could, of course, both be SAP or Dynamics or ERP systems like that. Once we have an approved delivery of the document, we delete it from the verify module, so we will no longer be able to get it back at all. So that's the life cycle of a document process flow in Readsoft. Now, the manager module, as I said, probably not many of you use it on a daily basis or have even seen it. So I will just very briefly walk through the different things that it also can. In the left-hand side, we have a view for all your invoice profiles. And do remember, I will be talking more about the profile in detail. But an invoice profile contains of what we call identifier profiles. That is some fields that we use to identify your supplier. And by standard, we have two identifiers. We have what we call a logo. That's a graphical identifier. It only sees more or less black and white. And then we also have what it's called TAL ID. It can also, that is a character recognition where we can, for instance, look up the VAT number from a supplier. Those are unique values for the supplier, so that is what we use for identifying your invoice supplier. Then we have the field profiles. Field profiles is the information we would like to capture on your invoice, and we can more or less capture everything that we want, but it doesn't make sense if it is not needed in your ERP system. So depending on what is needed in your workflow in ERP, we also set up the same information here in your field profile. We also have what we call a line item table. That's the information we would like to capture on line level. Not all of you are using it, but it's still a possibility. Then we have the job description. We use that to tell the system how to get invoices into your Readsoft Invoice product, and also how to deliver documents to your ERP system. We can either receive invoices through an email, we can scan it, we can receive it on XML, or even pick it up from a file share. We've seen a lot of different use cases. Then we have the possibility from the manager module to look at all invoices that are currently in the system. Normally, when we look into verify module, you only see invoices related to certain company codes, or maybe you're in a use group where you only see a fraction of the invoices available. But from the manager, you have a view of all available documents, no matter what status they have and stuff like that. You also have a view of the invoice definitions. It's the same view that we have in Optimize module. The only difference is that from the manager, you can also go in and unlock a definition if it's for some reason has been locked. We can also run the maintenance. Maintenance is two things. It can either be importing your master data. On a daily basis, we often import your master data that has been created from your ERP system. If you have an urgent need to import new master data, you can also go in manually and start the import job from the manager if it cannot wait till the next morning. We also have what we call a maintenance job, where we clean up definitions, invoice definitions, where we have some, where we ask, have you used a definition for more than, if you haven't used it for more than 300 days, should we delete it, or what should we do with it? And also, if it's performing poorly, then we can also automatically delete them. Jobs like that is running normally once a month, where we clean up a lot of stuff. Finally, what I would like to show in here is the process log. The process log can be used to search for a given invoice. Now, I stated earlier that as long as an invoice has not been delivered to a ERP system, once it has been delivered to ERP system, it will be deleted. But you still have some fractions of the document where we can see when you received it, who verified it, how far did it go, and why didn't it end up in your ERP system, if that is what you are trying to identify. But what you can see is that where did we last see the invoice, we have the different modules here. And if I search for transfer, it needs to be deleted in the transfer module before we can safely say it has been delivered to your ERP system. And if you double click on any of the invoices, you can also see when you received it. You can see who it was sent, who sent it, and who was it sent to, what the subject of the invoice, the email was, and what is the timestamp of the email and attachment name also. Then you can see who verified the document, and you can see at what time it was sent to your ERP system as well. You also have the possibility to search for the invoice number if it has been found. Of course, if it was deleted from the verify module before it found the invoice number, you will not be able to search for it. But as long as it has been captured, you can search for it here and try to identify if someone calls and say, my document hasn't been paid yet. Then you can see if it was deleted in the manager or the verify module. Yep. Any questions for the manager? Then we'll try and talk about some of the key concepts and mainly the profile. And a profile, as I just mentioned, it contains a lot of different fields, but also input and output jobs. But it's actually more than that. Each profile is country specific. That means you need to select which language you would like to create a new profile in. And there are some rules of thumbs that we are using. First of all, who is going to receive which legal entity will receive invoices from that particular profile? If you are verifying for a Danish company, I would suggest you use, of course, the Danish language. First of all the fields will be Danish to start with, but also we do have a lot of business logic behind each profile. For instance, there's a lot of search titles that are created to begin with, and also VAT rates, which VAT rates are normal used in Denmark, for instance, or in England, or whatever language you are creating. But also what are the majority of languages in the invoices that you are verifying. Now I know today that you receive a lot of different languages in invoices, and we're also going to talk about that. And just to give you an idea what is happening, just showing you two screenshots where I created two brand new profiles, one from Denmark, one from England, and tried to interpret a Danish invoice. And as you can see in the Danish, this is the Danish profile. And here you can see that it actually captures quite a lot for the first time when it sees this invoice. But if we use the same invoice and put it into the English profile, there's a lot of question marks that it doesn't know where to find the different things. And based on that, it's relevant to talk about first-time recognition because, as I mentioned, a profile is born with some search titles. And if I go back to the manager, and we can look at, I have this brand new Danish profile it is, and we look at the invoice number. And here you can see in titles, we have what we call search titles. And what happens is that the system, when it tries to identify the invoice number, it is searching for these different words. And whenever it finds it, it knows that if the title is right here, then the value must be next to it or below. That is how it works initially. What I would like to do then is, because you receive so many different languages, invoices in different languages, I would also suggest that you go in and if you take the same again, the invoice number and the titles, you have the possibility to put in your own titles as well. So just to make my custom Danish profile even better, I've added a lot of English word as well, invoice number and invoice, stuff like that. So just to add this new language to my Danish profile, it actually is as good as Danish to find info about English invoices. Then we have the business logic. In each profile, there's also some standard information about the VAT rates. In the Danish profile, it is only 25 and 0% that are allowed, but of course you can add as many as you want. But remember, as a standard, it follows the business logic for that particular country. And also we have what we call exclude titles. That means if we are searching for an invoice number, we should not take the order number or the grocery number, or all these that are in the exclude title should not be used to identify the invoice number. And there is this list for all of the different values that you have in your profile. Again, this is a list that you can manipulate, so you can add all the different words, German or Spanish or whatever you like. That's also possible. Then again, now that we are talking about first-time recognition, you need to pay attention to what we call the format specification. A specification is used to validate invoices or the information that we find on the invoices. And again, if we look at the invoice number, by standard, the system is set up to accept only a number, and it has to be between 2 and 15 characters. But we've seen that an invoice number can be just about anything. It can contain dashes and letters and stuff like that. So if we do not want to have validation errors all the time, we need to expand the specification some more and go in and say that we do actually allow uppercase characters and lowercase characters, special characters and spaces and stuff like that. And the reason for that is, and I will talk to you some more about that. The reason for that is when we receive an invoice the first time, the system actually copies everything that is in your profile and create what we call a definition. So if we are not expanding the specification enough, you will always need to do something manually to an invoice if the specification is too narrow. And then lastly, we have also what we call amount validation on an invoice profile. And based on the VAT rates, it can actually go in and validate if it captures the correct amounts, again, based on some mathematical rules. And to do so, we need to have at least 3 amount fields, and mainly the net amount, gross amount, and VAT amount as well. Based on these 3 and the VAT rate that we saw in the business rule, it can calculate if it captures the correct information. And if it doesn't add up, it will give you a warning as well. That helps to be even more precise when we do the extraction. Now I'm mentioning the invoice definitions quite a lot. So what is it and how does it work? Actually, it's just a kind of a template that Readsoft Invoices is using, and it's like having a piece of paper that you make some holes in it, and then if you lie it on top of an invoice from, let's say, Coma, the system knows exactly where to look for the different information for our layout of invoices. The problem with these invoice definitions is that over time they do accumulate quite a lot. Every time you approve a new invoice from a supplier that is unknown, there's an invoice being created. And they need to be maintained if you want to have your system optimized. And a rule of thumb is that it's much better to have few invoices that are good than a lot of poorly invoices. And I will actually try and go in now and show you exactly what is going on when we receive invoices the first time and how you can optimize them. So if we start by looking at the verify module, I have a complete blank system. So, and also if we look at my definitions, it's also blank. So I have nothing done in my system. So I will try now and import one invoice. Here we go. So I have an invoice, its status unidentified. That means it's the first time the system sees this invoice, and that's also why it is marked yellow. It actually did find the correct supplier, and that is based on the master data that I have in my system. It identified it on the VAT number, which we have in the tax number 1. And that's the master data that we are importing from your ERP system. So the first thing you need to do is actually just go in and accept that the supplier is correct. And then you see all the different fields that are available in my profile. Some of them are found, and some need some attention from me. The first one, the invoice number, it didn't find it at all. And I know for sure that is the one, but there's no title next to it. So that's why it's uncertain how to which one it is. So I'll just double click, and then it's being selected. The date, that is correct, even though there's no title, but it did find it. The net amount, there's no title next to it, so it's also uncertain which one it is. So we will just mark this one. The VAT amount is correct, and the total amount is correct. Also, there's no currency, so we will just select this one. And the rest is something that is not on this invoice, so we will just approve it. And still, if you look in my optimize module, I still don't have any supplier definitions at all. Once I approve this one, I go back to optimize. There's a new one created. And this one is a true copy of the invoice profile that we just saw before, with all the default settings that I have. So when I open it, I do see, for instance, my invoice number is allowing just about everything, both characters and stuff like that, which was good on the profile. But on the invoice definitions, it's one-to-one. So the definitions that I'm looking at here needs to be as correct as possible towards this particular supplier. So what I can do is go in and remove everything, because I know for sure they are only sending numbers as an invoice number, and it's only 6 digits. So instead of having the system to accept more or less everything, I just say N for number, and I know it's a 6-digit number. There's no title to this one, so I just select no title and press OK. For the logo, the system uses these 2 identifiers to identify the supplier, and it didn't even find a logo, and it also thinks that it's unnecessary. But if you want, you can always go in and mark the logo on the invoice and press OK. The TAL ID, it did select the VAT number, which is correct. And the way the identification works in Readsoft is that it is searching for a logo or a TAL ID or VAT ID. It only needs one of them. if you were to select and, if you need both the logo and the VAT number, then it's very important that both of these are learned. Otherwise, it will fail to identify it. The buyer field is not something that we are using, mainly because if you have a mailbox, we have a job that reads from that mailbox and addresses all these invoices into a certain buyer. So if you were scanning, let's imagine that you had 3 different companies that you are scanning for, we could actually go in and try and read the buyer information on the invoice. So you can just put it into one pile and start this the scanning process, and it will try to separate these stacks into different buyers itself. But it's not something we're using now that we have mailboxes. Invoice credit, it's quite a special field where the system tries to identify any information indicating that it's a credit note. And if it cannot find any, it will mark it as an invoice. But what you should do here is, if it says invoice somewhere on the invoice, then mark that one, because often they just tend to change it to a credit note if it's a credit note. Just went through the invoice number. The date. When you optimize dates, as you can see, we have these specifications where we say DD, MM, YY. And that simply means that this particular supplier sends 2 characters for days, 2 for month, and 2 for the year. What happens then is that the system translates the dates into a format that you as a company has decided how you would like to have it and verify. If they had the months in the beginning and day after next to it, then you will have to say MMDDYY instead. If they used 2024 as the year, you would also need to put in 2 more Ys like that. As long as it's only numbers that you have on a date, it doesn't matter which language you select down here. But if they start using text for the month name, it's very important that you select the correct language here, because the system then looks up in a table that if it says July or something like that, it needs to look up into the French list and find the number 7 for July. So it's important that you select the right language when you optimize dates. If you just go back to the invoice number. Now, we have this box called position. What we're using that for is telling the system exactly where do we expect this field to appear on the invoice. Header information, that is information above line items, they are often at the same position always. So the good thing about this one, even though there's no title, we know for sure that the invoice number will always be located here, and the same goes for the date. But if we were searching for instance, the net amount, then sometimes we see net amounts are just below the last line. That means it can travel up and down on the invoice paper. And if that happens, what we need to do, let me go to this one. What we need to do is go in and select this arrow that is going up and down. That simply means that the system will try and identify where the net amount is going up and down. But to do so, it also needs to have a title. So it's very lucky for us that this one actually always puts the net amount at the bottom of the invoice. But when we use this arrow up and down, it searches for the title that you have in this list, and it tries to find it in the position where you put it. Once it finds it, it goes out to the right and takes this value that it finds. We will just put it back to this one. All right, so let's not try and do more with this definition. We instead, I would try and send it into the system once more and see what actually happens. Now, this is the second time the system sees the invoice. While it's interpreting, what we can also see here is that the definition has been used one time, and the identification is, sorry, I did save my optimize. Yeah, it has been used one time. That's what we can see now, and you can see who created it and when it was created and when it was last used. So there's a lot of information here. If we look at verify again, there's a new one. Now it says field error. Previous one said unidentified, but now it's field error. So that means actually now it knows for sure that this is the right supplier. It did find all the information that I just marked before. This one is still something I don't want. And the same goes for this QR field. But what I forgot previous run was to mark the lines. I would actually like to capture line items as well. So what I can do is I can use this arrow that we have here, or pencil, sorry, and it comes up with a dialog where we need to identify the different fields that are shown in our profile: the item number, item text, the net, the price, the current, how many did we order, the total line, and stuff like that. So if we say, okay, there's no item number, there's an item text, this one, there's a price for that, there's quantity, and a line total. These are the four information that this one is sending. So we just press finish, and then the system starts to interpret the rest of the lines. We put them in. So what you've done now is actually learn the structure for this particular invoice. You can use the pencil as many times as you want. For instance, if there's a freight amount on the line as well, they often don't put in the quantity. So that will be a different structure of the line. So what you need to do is, again, press on this pencil and mark the different structure that could be on an invoice. It could also be that they have a lot of text, as you where, for instance, now this one, everything is on the same line, but if the amount was written at the last line of this text box, then the structure would have been different from the three others, so it wouldn't understand how to read it. So you need to help just mark all the different structures, and then it will automatically capture all your lines. Good. Let's try and approve this one again. Go into optimize, because there was some field that was unnecessary for me. So what I would go in and do is the order number. I know there's no order number on this one, so I will go in and inactivate it. I can do that by clicking on this small icon here. Press OK. Same goes for registration number, account number, email, and QR field. Those are not necessary for me. So let's try and approve it again. Put the mail into the system and run the job. Done. So now we just got a new one. This time it says complete. And that is actually what we want. We have all the line captured. We have all the information captured. We don't have too many information that is unnecessary for this supplier. And that is actually what we want. There's one more thing that I would like to show you in Optimize before we move on. As you can see, they have a lot of graphic in the middle of the invoice. if the system, let's imagine it says 116 instead of 16, what you can do is you can use a filter to try and remove it. The filter is located at the upper left corner. If you click on these small dots, you can go in and mark an area where you would like to apply this filter. And you can use this drop-down list to try and select some of the different filters that are available. I can't say for sure what they all mean, but you can just try and use them one by one. This one was actually quite good. It almost removed everything. Take desparkle. Not that good. Now the graphic is back again. There's erase. You cannot use that. That removes too much. It's good if you have an amount that is too close to a horizontal. This line, if the amount were larger, it could take this one as a one. This line as a one. So you can go in and remove that as well. But just play around with the filters and see if you can remove as much as possible. Any questions for Optimize? Oh, good. Then I will move on. So what do you need to optimize? Because you cannot do this on all your definitions, then it will take forever. Our suggestion is that when you look at your Optimize module, we do have a lot of statistics, as I mentioned. Each time you use an invoice definition, all these different numbers are being, they change over time. But remember, every time that you go in and approve a definition, you reset everything except the all-time total. But over time, as you can see, all the different numbers are rising. And we have the total, that is how many times have you used the definitions since you optimized it. All-time total is how many times you used it since you created it the first time. Ident rate is how good it is to identify the supplier itself. Poorly interpreted means that something, if you see over time that an invoice definition suddenly needs your attention and verify, if you need to change more than 40% of the invoice, the fields, the poorly interpreted will start rising. Ident interpret is that is what we want. That means the system automatically identifies the supplier. But the really bad thing is if we have those called incorrect ident. What you can do is you can sort this field by just pressing the headline. And what it means is that for this particular invoice definition, the system selected that one. So it thinks that the invoice that it just interpreted was from this Ruby transport company. But when you open the invoice, you can see it's actually a different supplier. So what you do is you change it to a different supplier inside Verify, and you start typing more or less everything manually. And that is not what we want. So pay attention if you have a high number in incorrect ident compared to the total. And I suggest you simply delete them or try to figure out why they're not working in your system. The other thing, all-time total, look at those, and you can also sort that on that field. And a rule of thumb is that if you can optimize 20% of your top of those that you're receiving most invoices from, you can almost cover 80% of your invoice flow. So meaning if you actually can go in and also approve it, you will not see 80% of your invoices in Verify. Then we also have what we called the optimize field. This is the optimize field. By standard, it always says it's 0. And to change this value to 99, you need to use the function save to optimize. And save to optimize is, just a second. Save to optimize is something you use if, let's imagine you have this supplier, everything goes well. Suddenly it starts complaining about some field that it cannot identify anymore. The problem is, if you go in and optimize it and optimize, you might see everything is perfect aligned and you cannot do anything to make it even better. But what you can do instead is save document to optimize from the verify module. Just show you how you're doing it. From the verify module, you go into invoice and you can press save to optimize. And when you do that, it comes up with this dialog where it asks you, why do you want to save it to optimize? And here you can state that cannot find date and order number, for instance, and just press OK to that. What happens then is that you are actually sending a copy of the invoice that you're looking at right now to someone who is going to optimize it, together with the information that you just provided. You can also have some predefined information that you can select from instead of writing everything manually, but that is the dialog. The reason why I'm showing you this is you will receive this afterward. So why do you want to use this functionality, and when do you need to use it? You can use it if you see an invoice that is connected to a wrong supplier, meaning that it says it's from Ecoma, but when you open it, it's from Maersk Line, for instance. You can also use it if you see one or more fields that are not being captured correctly. Then it's a good idea to use the save to optimize functionality. Also, if you as a verify operator is not doing the optimization, it's a different person, then it makes sense to save to optimize. And that is because using this dialog box, you actually put on a kind of a post-it note that you would like to have this and this fixed on this invoice definition. You should also use it if you're not optimizing on the fly, meaning that you are collecting a lot of optimize and the definitions you would like to optimize on a later in another day. And if you are optimizing on old definitions as well. And the reason why, especially the last one with old definitions, I have an example here where this is from 2017, and the same company 4 years after. As you can see, they have a complete different layout of the invoice, where it normally says invoice number right here. Not only is it disappeared, but if it actually did find something, it would capture a name instead. If you didn't send in this information, you would still optimize on this one, but in real life, it would look like this. So when you do send in save to optimize, you can see we have how it was set up in 17 and how it's set up in 21. So by clicking on the new one, you will get the new layout and you can start optimizing on that instead. And once you approve an invoice that you have optimized, it will reset back to a status 0 in the optimize field. Questions to that? Oh. All right, next thing, variance. Variance is a feature that allows us to have more than one invoice definition for the same supplier. In this case, I've shown a company called Mantrock, where it has a department in Greve and one in Hvidovre. And normally the system works the way it searches for the logo. And whenever it finds a logo that is suitable for the system, it will start searching for other definitions that could be even better. So in this case, when we receive an invoice from Hvidovre, we know that the invoice number is the upper right corner. Problem is, if it comes from this one, suddenly we get a date instead. So every other time that we receive invoices, it is not the correct information that we get. So in this case, we need to have what we call a variant. We need to create two different definitions for the same supplier. And to do so, let me show it in Verify instead. What you can do, if you have this one open and you can see this is a layout that you cannot recognize, you need to create a variant. So what you do is you go to the description field, type in the variant name, call it variant demo, and once you press enter, it says that this invoice will be used now to create a new invoice definition, and you need to be as accurate as possible, meaning that everything you do now will be saved for the new definition that we are going to create. And also what will happen now is that the system will reset the profile so all fields will be available again. As you can see, it still knows more or less everything that was captured beforehand and also on the line items, but all the new fields or the hidden field reappears. You can simply go in and approve it again. So what will happen here is that instead of having one for this company, we now have two definitions for the same company with the same supplier number. And you can see there's a variant demo, and we have the one with the blank description is the one was initially created. Good. Yeah, as you can see, we differentiate between looking at the description. That's where you find it in Optimize. If you select a supplier and Verify that have variants, it will also pop up with this dialog where it says these two are available. There's the default one, and then there's new one where it will say variant demo instead. You can have as many definitions as you like, but hopefully you shouldn't select it manually. We would actually like the system to distinguish which one of the layouts it should use, but it's not always easy. Sometimes it can only be a currency that is the difference between the two variants. It could also, in this case, be the languages, where we have German language in one, English is in another. Still, it's the same logo, but just different texts. So what you can do here is actually select one of your identifiers, and it needs to be the value identifier. And here you can tell that if it says Rechnung in this one, it should select the German description, variant. And if it says invoice, it should use the default one. That is how I've set up this one, just to demonstrate it. And also you need to make sure that you select both the logo and the second identifier needs to be present on the invoice. Otherwise, it will just stop when it sees the logo. We use it a lot to differentiate between different currencies for suppliers. And the main goal for all this trouble that you are going through in Optimize is, of course, to have automatically approval for your invoices. And that means instead of looking at invoices and Verify with status complete, we would like to go lead them directly into your ERP system. And there's two ways of doing that. I think I will show it in Optimize. The first one is, of course, do it in Optimize. Under the settings, we have the invoice field. If you click automatically approve invoices with complete status, this invoice will be led directly into ERP system. But as we do have a lot of validation rules, we narrowed down that it's only a 6-digit number or stuff like that. If there is a validation rule, it will still stop in Verify. So you don't need to be nervous about clicking this field. But there's also another way of doing it, and that might be even more suitable for you. What you can do in a profile is go to settings, go to invoice, and here you have this number. if you set this one to 20, for instance, then what happens if you verify 20 invoices in a row without doing anything other than pressing OK or approve, then it will automatically come up with a suggestion saying that you just approved this one 20 times without doing anything. Let's enable it for auto approval. It might get it for some. It's better having it that way because it gives them a certainty that the system actually doing it correctly. So these are the two different ways of setting an invoice to auto approval. And also in the manager, when you look at all the different invoice definitions, we can see in this auto approve tab how many invoice definitions has actually been set to auto approve. And of course, I think it would be a good idea to try and have as many as possible. That's the whole reason for having invoices, that it should be it should do all the work for you and not use it as a manually input system. You can also see from the process log which of the document has been auto approved and which one has just been auto completed. Now there's no auto approved there because I didn't have any in my system when I took the screenshot, but it would say auto approved in this one. So the reward for doing this: faster verification and approval of your documents. And remember, it's a one-time investment when you do this. Instead of verifying the same document over and over, go in and try and optimize instead, so you won't have to spend any more time. And that is my last slide. And if there are any questions, just feel free to ask.
I have one question to the last part. This number of approved invoices without any touch them, it's 20. It is for all of the invoices in total or in row?
That is in row.
In row. Okay, thank you.
It's so yeah. So of course 20 is a lot. You can set it to 5 probably.
Yeah.
But it will not do it automatically. It will just tell you that now you have done it that many times, so you can go in and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
No.
No. Then I think I have nothing more for today. And I hope you learned something.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome. And feel free to contact me if needed.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.